How's it going, everybody? We got a new friend in the house, Alisha Brache. I think is how you pronounce her name. Hopefully, I didn't mess it up. Welcome, everybody. This should be very interesting. There's a bio that I put, I believe, yeah, I did. I put it on the post announcement. But we'll just do this in typical Soulology style and get to know her in front of all of our brothers and sisters and have a conversation about what's going on, real time intel. Let's see. Let me get her up here. Here we go. Here we go. Let's see. Start video. Hello. Oh wait, you're there. You go.
Hey Todd, how you going?
Very good. How you doing? You're out of Sydney. Is that where you're at?
I'm in Melbourne.
Oh, you're in Melbourne. Yeah, we have
Yeah.
for some reason, my wife's from Adelaide, but for some reason we have a real strong representation in Melbourne. Like
Oh,
I
that's
know it's
awesome.
not that big compared to some of the other cities, but I think it's like sixth or seventh. You know,
Yeah, yeah, about that. I think we're about the second largest city in
in
Australia. Yeah.
second largest. Is that right?
Yeah.
In Soulology, it's like as far as like the demographics, I don't know what you call it, following or whatever, but I think it's like sixth or seventh. When you compare
Oh,
that to some of
wow.
the other cities like London and Chicago and some of the bigger cities. So I don't know why. It must be a very spiritual area, I would think.
I would say so. At least in my world it is. So,
Your world,
yeah.
that's what we're here to find out about. So when did you wake up?
Um, oh, that's a really good question. I was kind of one of those kids that I was always seeking, like I was always aware as a child.
Hmm.
So, um, I would say probably the biggest turning point was around 2015, and I had quite an abrupt Kundalini awakening, and that changed everything. But prior to that, I mean, I had been in and out of this world. I always joke and say I used to have one foot in the corporate world and one in doing my healing work, and
Yeah.
so 2015 was like the big cosmic push of you can't
Everybody,
live a double life anymore.
yeah, everybody got those big cosmic pushes. It seems like. And you
Yeah.
said you had a pretty big Kundalini awakening, just for the sake of. And that's part of the reason we have this show is so people, through the experience of the people that come on and talk about it, they can at least get some type of support or validation or whatever, because there's a lot of people going through the same thing that you went through and others went through, in the past few years. What was what was that experience like? I mean, when it was happening, did it just come in out of nowhere, or were you meditating consistently with that type of objective?
Not specifically. When I look back, I realized that I'd had mini ones in a decade leading up to that. I was always aware of it. My first teacher would talk about, a Kundalini awakening and Ida and Pingala and all those sort of teachings, but it wasn't something I was actively seeking. So it took me by surprise, but I had a beautiful experience with it. And it took me a couple of days to realize what was actually happening.
Hmm.
Um, I was just very, very heightened. I had the pop. I know a lot of people have that like the
Out the
gunshot.
back of your head? Isn't that crazy? I remember I had it happen. I was about 25 and I was meditating. I was like you, one foot in, one foot out, and I would do it every night. And it happened. Well, one night, the first it happened, and it went like partially up my spine, and I freaked out. And then the second time, like maybe 3 days later, it happened, and I was okay because it blew out. The pop happened, but then I was totally conscious, and I felt because I was on the left side of the bed, and I felt my left foot land on the floor like I was getting up. And I looked down and my feet were on the bed and I went, holy crap. And I shut it down. But I also remember so mine was 2011. So it would have been uh, first part of 2011. That happened to me. I was around a bunch of people and I was at this club and we were out on the back patio, and I said, I got to go. I didn't know what was going to happen because I'd had a history of seizures throughout my life, from 15 to up about to that point. And so I went and sat in a bar stool, and it just came up. And I remember it blew out of my, it popped out like massively. And I didn't even think about it. And once I was, balanced, I went back to the group I was with. But now I realized later that's when it really started. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, I don't know about you, but like mine was a lot of hindsight. It was like you get to a certain point and you look back and you're like, oh, that experience led to that, to that, to
Yes,
that.
that's exactly right. In the moment, I didn't make any sense of it. I was
Mhm.
not conscious. I wouldn't say I was conscious, but I realize now, and actually I didn't realize it until just I told you the story. I thought, well, wait a minute, that happened like 2 months before everything went upside down. So I guess that was the prerequisite. And I hear different people talk differently about that experience, but the popping out part seems to be something that happens to many of them, not everybody,
Yeah.
but, and I still think that, the others that don't have that experience and they talk about the Kundalini, in different ways,
Mm.
it's still just as relative, So,
Yeah,
and
for
then
sure.
you do, now you're an energy practitioner, right?
Yes, correct.
And what
Yeah.
type of work do you do? I mean, do you have a
Um,
specific modality, or do you have like a toolkit?
I would say I have a toolkit. It's sort of, I always say that it's a modality that organically grew over about 10 years. So
Yeah.
as a child, I was very fascinated by putting my hands on people or scanning people. I used to run
Mm.
my hands over and I could feel a hot and cold temperature, and I knew where there was like aches or pains or so I guess it was always there.
Wow.
And then as I went along, I would study, different types of modality until I got to a point. I think it was around that time, around 2011, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go with what I'm being shown. You know, it and as I started to follow and work more intuitively, year after year, it kind of developed in its own way. But it was after that moment, the
Mm-hmm.
Kundalini moment, that I started having more conscious contact with Arcturian beings. And at the time, I didn't even know what that was, but
Yeah.
I kept hearing, you're now channeling the Arcturian ray. And I would tell my clients
Ah.
that, and they say, what is that? I'm like, I don't know. It was.
So the Arcturian ray came in. Oh, we got a little bit of reverb. It came in before that incident in 2015,
Just after.
just after. So
Yeah.
so up to that point, had you had like, well, let's say in your communication with infinite intelligence, let's put it that way, because you obviously were a healer, you had some kind of intuitive thing going on. Were you getting messages prior to that?
Um, not specifically from them, but absolutely. Like my
Yeah.
work's always been highly intuitive in terms of communicating with different, energy beings
Hmm.
and different forms of all sorts. So
Yeah.
that wasn't so far, and it was just another layer of, oh, what's this? So it literally, as you said, like after that experience, my whole life tipped upside down.
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's funny how this happens. And I guess people should know this. I mean, if they've watched enough of these shows, they would probably hear the story of different people's stories. And it's crazy because I know for myself, and it sounds like for you, that you have this enhanced uh, main line of communication to, let's just say the non-physical, but at the same time, your world turns upside down. So like you're in this crazy spectrum where the human's going through these extreme conditions, successive traumas, and just different things happening. And then on the other end, you're more in tune than you ever have been. And
Yes.
that's I think the big challenge for people, because they're like, am I crazy? Even if you talk to people, even now, like there's a lot more support. It's a lot more open. But even, I get messages from people and they're like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know what to think. You're the only one but I can tell you're not crazy.
Mm.
You know, that's the thing. You question your sanity.
Yes, very much so. And I think 2016 for me was a lot of that.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of that because I was in a whole new space that the old world just didn't make sense to me anymore. It was hard to relate to people. I couldn't live how I lived before, you know. So that yeah, there's the grieving of the old life, and then there's the beauty of this new one that's not fully formed. Doesn't really make all that much sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because the grieving of the old life has all these people in it, right? And the new life has nobody. It's just you and the universe, and and whoever whatever faces of the universe that are communicating with you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I don't know if you went through this, but I did, and I think a lot of people I've observed over the years, they want to go tell everybody, which
Yeah.
just exacerbates the space
The culling,
between,
the
right,
shedding.
right. Everyone's like, oh, why won't anybody listen to me? And then you realize, everybody's got to do their own thing. So did the Arcturians have, or have they had, if you're still communicating with them, I mean, did they have specifics for you? Like, were they giving you collective intel, personal intel, or both?
Um, all of the above, but specifically at that time, it was to show me this modality that I was already kind of formulating. So they were showing me how I would go in and clear energy fields to break down and release like what they call like 3D density of
Mm,
accumulation of all 3D lives, and then bring in the higher activations um, that's aligned with that particular soul. So it was much more specific at that point, where it had been more me just intuitively playing around with color and frequency,
mm.
and then it was like, no, we want you to kind of go in and do this and this. So
Well, that
um,
there's the people talk about going up to the light ship, to the healing rooms. I'm sure I can already tell you. And so, like, when I hear the directions that you were getting, it almost sounds like you were or are kind of an extension of what people talk about when they go, because they do talk about the Arcturians a lot of times, specifically in terms of the healing in the light ships and such. And I remember 8 years ago, because I didn't have any clue about galactics. Mine were angelics and other types of divine essences. But I remember one time I was having a pretty difficult time. It was actually more than one time. It was about 3 or 4 times. But I remember they came in and they called themselves the blue light healers, and there were 6 of them. And then there was a seventh one that stood at my head, which I guess I was seeing through third eye, and he was the miracle keeper. And so I called on them a couple of times in the ensuing months afterwards. And now that I look back on it, like you said about the retrospect, I have a feeling that's what they were.
yeah,
The blue seemed to really stand out. I don't know.
yeah,
Does that color? I don't even know. Does that color jive with Arcturians? The
yeah,
blue? Yeah,
very much so. Yeah, very much
yeah,
so. Yeah,
yeah. They seem to
that
be a
that
they seem to be a prominent player. Or I mean, I know we're talking. Um, I know we're talking about energy. I mean, because it's so hard to like be literal about this stuff. But the Arcturian energy or ray seems to have a really big role in what's going on. Have they discussed any of that with you?
look, I feel like I get intel all the time, and I don't sort of specify it so much. I mean, I guess if I was, more tuned into where it's coming from, but yeah, I've had. It was 2016. I started having a lot more visions and dreams and experiences that would show me about the planet and the transformation. And I mean, I'd always known about it, but there was new language coming in that's more prevalent today. And
So when you say
yeah,
your sound waves are, I have to wait till they stop. So pre Arcturian ray coming in, you had some idea of what was going to, or what was transpiring, or what was going to transpire. I would call it, say, ascension download.
Yes.
And I know this because my wife, started doing this 20 years ago, and it amazed me when I met her, and I believed her that she was getting all this information. And then, of course, as doing this show, 2,000 episodes, a lot of women, particularly women, have come in saying, "Oh, I was, estranged from my family, living in a room of a relative's house. I'm getting downloaded every day, and I was told this is going to happen, and I'm like waiting and waiting and waiting." And so you were actually getting that information before it happened. You had some idea of it, and then they gave you, I guess, more clarity on what was going on.
Yeah. Actually, it goes back a little bit prior. Around, it was equinox, 2015, and I just started going through transition. I ended a long-term relationship, and I was, moving house and all that. And it was the first time I was living alone, funnily enough. And I was just drifting off to sleep, and I knew there was something really significant that was going to happen. And next thing, an Indigenous woman appeared in my room in almost like physical materialization. Yeah. And all she just said to me was, you don't know your greatness yet, but you will. Wow. And I still get, and she said, I just want to thank you for what you and your soul tribe will do over the coming few years in service.
We got a lot to talk about.
Okay, cool.
No, well, my wife and I have had quite a few dimensional experiences, and one of them has been a couple of years ago where the room filled up with star family. There's probably 8, maybe 10, and they were translucent. They were humanoid, and they were translucent. It sounds like that this Indigenous woman was translucent. I mean, she was, like you said, almost physical.
Yeah.
Did it scare you?
No, not at all. Yeah. I mean, I've had many experiences over my life, and that was just, but that one always stands out to me as being the most profound, because I wasn't familiar with her. It wasn't someone who I was familiar with communicating with. And just before she was about to leave, I said, "Wait, who are you?" Yeah. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, "They call me Mother of the Earth." And she was gone. Yeah.
Wow.
So I would say that was the point when, and at that point, I just wanted to tell everyone, come on, we're going to, we've got work to do. This massive thing happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that sounds like a typical experience. And then, your family and friends want to show up with the guys in the white jackets, and take you away. Isn't that crazy though, how the human aspect part of it, everybody's story pretty much the same. I mean, they come on here and they say, I had this succession of traumas. My life turned upside down. A lot of them end up in what I term as the universal isolation, where you're, like you said, you're living alone for the first time, and you're just there in solitude, and you have this incredible stuff going on, and then you've got to go out and function. Like, I mean, that's just huge. But it seems like we've kind of, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. Your story very similar to mine and many people that have come on here. But it seems like we're starting to pull all that together. People use the term embodiment. Does that resonate with you?
100%. 100%. And I think it's beautiful. And I think I love when I connect with the clients or just soul family, and to hear the stories and the similarities, and it's just validation and confirmation if we are having those really, what I call really human moments of like, am I crazy? Have I lost it? But it does take, I from my own experience and what I kind of see is like from that point, then there is such as you said, embodiment and integration into the physical experience.
Do you find that, I know my wife told me, we've been together almost 5 years, and I think it took 2 years she would say, none of that stuff matters until you embody it.
Mm-hmm.
And I would ask her every 2 3 months, what does that mean? And now eventually I got it. But do you find that you have to consciously embody, or is it more of a natural process?
I think in the beginning, I had it. It's more natural now, but in the beginning, I had to really, really ground myself. I mean, that's been a problem for most of my life, but I mean, the energy that was charging through me, at times, my whole body was just vibrating, and just having such way out there, like multi-dimensional experiences. And that, that's the fun part, right? But and then you're hit with this like harsher reality that's going on, and
Yeah.
then you have to try and balance the two. It's a constant process.
Yeah, it
But
seems to
I
be.
would,
It seems to be that, and I know I was that way when I met Morgan. Like I was spending all my time out, in that space, and as a human, I was in solitude. I was doing some grounding, through dance and walking. I was medicating a lot, so I really wasn't dealing with, the stuff that was attached to me, I guess. The things that I identified myself with, traumas, relationships, roles, labels, and all that. But I mean, so I guess at some point, I mean, some people talk about shadow work, inner work, zero pointing, that stuff that the human has to show up for, with the brutal honesty of the soul. Do you feel like you had to go through that?
massively,
Yeah.
massively. And even, I mean, 2016 for me was like the darkest of the darkest. I thought I'd hit, I would have thought, or I would have said prior to that, that I had gone through my dark night. It's so funny how naive we are. um, that entire year was, broke me apart, and
Yeah.
then had to put myself back together.
Isn't that?
So,
I started to refer to him as the mini, as in MINI, mini Dark Nights of the Soul. Like it's almost like a, I don't want to say a loop, because that, that to me that more specifies like old patterns and stuff. But yeah. But does it seem to be fading to you? Does it seem like things are like, that embodiment to me would be almost like a merging or a zero pointing of all that fantastic cool stuff out there and the nitty gritty down here? Does it feel like it's getting more relaxed, more comfortable?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll be honest. Earlier this year, I took a bit of a nosedive for a couple
Mm,
of months, but overall, I think yeah, you come back to an equilibrium,
yeah.
and that balance, or that zero point, as you talk about,
Yeah.
much faster, much quicker. So you
Yeah.
can, yeah, it's
It's
a
still
sliding
some of
scale.
the, yeah, some of the intensity seems to be just as intense and maybe even more, but it doesn't last very long. If you can just hold your space and stand in your field, which to me, I find it takes some moments of solitude. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 5 hours. I went through a period the other day and it was about 17 hours. I was asleep about 3 or 4 of those hours, but I had to be with my own stuff. All this stuff was like just floating around, and I don't know. It's a different math. It seems like this year, like I don't have to know everything. Do you feel like you have to know everything? What happened? What went down? Or just surrender?
Yeah, I think along this journey, so much of it that has been presented to me has allowed me to be in the mystery of the unknown and
Mhm.
be okay with that. Um, which I
Yeah.
think was a hard thing for me to do, because I started my work very early on doing psychic work. And so I was someone who often kind of knew the answers. And then beyond, for me, beyond that point, it was like can't even do that because you're reading different timelines, and there's so much more at play than, you know, than
True.
just, yeah,
It's like a big
knowing.
spaghetti bowl. It's like a
Yeah,
big
it really
spaghetti
is.
bowl, right? Yeah. Now I know, like, there's been a lot of conversation on the show, and otherwise, out in social media, in these circles, from June 1st on.
Hmm.
Like, I know there was that eclipse period, and it kind of culminated the first week of July, and seems like something really flipped. Um, I don't know what your experience has been, but how have the last few weeks been for you?
Um, it's a really good question. Just something definitely shifted halfway through, for sure. And some of the messages that kept sort of coming through were like, the second half of the year is going to look very, very different to the first half of the year. The first half of the year was kind of like a crash course for some, or for me, it was like going back, covering old ground, making sure that I had, really dotted my I's and crossed my T's in my own process.
Yeah.
And being comfortable with that, and I guess different levels of embodiment. And then, it's showtime come
Yeah.
second half of 2020.
Yeah. It was kind of like we were being prepared, or served notice, get your shift
Mm-hmm.
together because you're going to get shot out of a cannon. you know, I mean, like the last week, everyone that I've talked to, including myself, I mean, the last week has just been intense. I mean, and again, it's these on the linear level, it's short periods of processing, very quick. Somebody just put up a comment, Donna Stucker. She said it is more intense, but bouncing back is quicker too.
Yeah.
Totally on board with y'all on that. What do you do? Oh, there was a comment here. I don't want to. Allison's asking, what kind of messages are you getting for the collective? What kind of stuff do you feel will happen in the second half of 2020? That's a bold potential answer.
I mean, it's going to look different for everyone depending on where they're at. So it's a good question. I mean, sometimes I ask myself that, or my team, or whatever, because I want to know. But I guess it is. Um, I'm just trying to think. One thing that I will say, I kept getting this repeated message. It was through sessions. It was to myself. It was, so I take that as collective, and I think I do get a lot of collective messages when I'm working with people, and that's the beauty of it. That it can be shared. And I kept getting this sunrise in July metaphor of like, here's like a whole string of mountains. There's sun rising up. That's that solar energy that's coming from, black sun or whatever you want to call it. That's going to permeate the earth. That's going to start to really build some strong frequencies on the planet like we haven't had before. But we've just, as we were getting closer, it was like we've just got to get through this. This mountain is the obstacle, which is, whether that, that's going to be, individual, whether that's shadow work or what, it's going to be. But we're getting closer. And actually, yesterday, I'll just share this. I was in the middle of a session and I looked up, and on my screen there was like music playing. It had, beautiful images. And I saw that image of the mountains and the sunrise coming up behind it. And I heard, you now got your sunrise in July. And it was shortly after that I got the email from you. And I was like, oh, okay, things are shifting now. So that was kind of a cool
Wow.
synchronicity.
That resonates. I actually feel like another threshold's been crossed. And I just want to say to Allison, no need to say you're sorry. I wasn't saying that the question was bold. I was saying anyone that's brave enough to answer that question's bold. I don't know if I would want to answer that question. That's because every time you throw something down on the universe, you know what happens. You can't throw an absolute down on the universe. Now you have quite a few clients or history, with doing this type of work, and based on what you just said a minute ago. So you're picking up collective information, not only from your own intel, but actually from your encounters with your clients. Has that had an uptick this year? Has something, have you seen a difference in what's, walking in the door, so to speak, to sit down with you, or, when you work online? Are people, are they in a different state of awareness? Are you seeing a change in your clientele?
Yeah, I think it's been really beautiful because like I deal with predominantly the people that I work with are people who hold really high frequency anyway. They're either practitioners or people who've been put on a really fast tracked ascension process. They're the type of people, and then also the divine partnership aspect as well. Um, and so I would say for each person, wherever their frequency's at, it's definitely gone up a notch. And then also the beauty is I've had some newly awakened people, come on board and connect. And I love to see that because it's like, okay, cool, this this is permeating and going out, and I love it when you see people who you just, not that you think that they're never gonna wake up, but it surprises you, and I think that's a good feeling when you start to see that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sitting here talking to you, and sometimes weird things, not weird, but sometimes, what is that? What do you call that when it's like the translucent being or something happens and your lower five senses, so to speak, are privy to it, yet it's dimensional or quasi dimensional? So I had this experience 2 years ago in a hotel room in Houston, and it was an Arcturian thing, right? So, and there was these kind of like these um, what do you call it? Like when you're making pictures and they're not like uh, or making an art abstract. When you make an abstract bird and it's just like that, right? And they filled
Yeah.
up the room. I've seen three of them talking to you, right? The first one I went, did I see that? The second one and the third one I just saw a minute ago. And it was the same type of thing. I thought, is that a fairy? And then I thought about the Arcturians and how they looked that night. They just looked like a bunch of those abstract birds flying around the room. So I don't know if you have that happen to you, but I just saw three of them over there. That's interesting. You can't make
Yeah.
this stuff up.
Well, I'm now at a place where I'm living on my own again, and
Hmm.
I kind of enjoy that because I know that things are going to get wild. you know
Yeah, yeah,
if I'm living with other people, it's a bit more
yeah.
tame, but if I'm in my own space, I mean, anything can happen.
Yeah, it'd be like Bewitched, right? Like Bewitched living alone. Like everything's just so. And I always love asking practitioners this question, especially one like you who's been so open about your human aspect. I mean, your human's front and center. I can tell. Like even when you said you kind of took a nosedive earlier in the year. What do you do when you get triggered? I
I
mean, how
felt
do
that
you?
when you said that. I was like,
How do you? I mean, how do you handle that? How do you handle and not necessarily just a trigger, but like sometimes the energy comes in and it just knocks you on your butt. I mean, how do you come back to center?
I guess there's many things. I'll be completely honest. There's many things. It depends what the trigger is.
Hmm.
Sometimes I'll need to pick up the phone and call like a really close soul fan member and just, I'll go in and say, look, I'm going to rant. Please just don't take anything I say seriously. Just please just give me space and listen.
Yeah.
Um, but I
So is that?
tend to go within more. So if
Yeah.
something has triggered me, I'd like to be on my own and
Yeah.
sort of sit with it
Yeah.
and then try and dismantle it, I guess. And
Yeah.
I tend to work a lot with the energy, and I teach people like, feel into the body. Where does it sit? Play with it, talk to it, like
Yeah.
the
I was
actual
gonna.
trigger itself as an energy form.
Yeah.
See where it comes from, and then collapse it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good method. Morgan taught me that. Just pull the energy up. I did it this morning. I had some energy present itself. I thought, what is that? I just started to talk to it, and it basically told me nothing. You're paranoid. it's just it's just the traffic, man. Yeah.
I think for me, I've always been highly sensitive and like empathic. So quite often I'll have to go through a process of asking, is it mine? Um, am I picking up from someone else? It's not that I don't want to, put away, oh no, dismiss it, but I tend to pick up on other people very, very easily. And I've known, like, a perfect example, like I connected with a client yesterday and helped her through some really hard stuff a couple of years ago. And unbeknownst to me, she was going through this very specific trigger. And all of a sudden it was in my head, it was in my field, it was in my emotions. And I had placed it onto this must be happening in my life. And it wasn't until I connected with her 24 hours later and she told me what was going on. I was like, I was processing that exact thing. And so I always say people, it's an energy, see where it's coming from. And obviously there's going to be a resonance within you if you're picking up on that, and, it serves a purpose. But yeah, I could share a lot of wild stories around picking up on different people's things. So that's another element of people who may be like earth sensitive as well, or empathic.
And I hear people talk about that, and there's, and I've also observed, which I guess a lot of us have, kind of a evolution of the empath over the last 5 or 6 years, where there used to be a lot of empath support groups, and now it seems to have turned into, what am I trying to say, more of a positive or manageable force, as opposed to, what the hell, why does this always happen to me when I walk in a room full of people? But I mean, people, so they talk about, oh, is it mine? How do you, is there a way, do you know of a way to figure out if it's yours or not?
Yeah, I got really good at it because it was, like you said, I mean, being empathic is a superpower. It's one of our, new human functions that I think everyone has access to. But when it's misunderstood, and you don't have support or ways to maneuver through it, it can be debilitating. I'll be the first to say that. I struggled with it all my life. But I often say if something comes in, whether it's emotional or energetic or mental, and it's not relevant to your reality at that time, that's when you would take a deeper look as to asking, and normally what I do is just sort of take a moment, take a couple of deep breaths, and tune in and just ask the question, is this mine? And wait for the instant yes or no. And then if it's no, then I'll ask, whose is it? And generally get a name or an image of a face, or and then also you've got the other layer of the collective stuff too, because we're all tapped into that. So whatever's whatever's
like,
present.
True. So like if it's somebody else with the collective, it doesn't really make any difference. It's still so. And what do you do once you figure out, or once you understand it's not yours? How do you does when you come to the conclusion that it's not yours, or you're told that it's not yours, do you immediately come into balance and align, or do you have to go through another? Oh, you immediately go into it. Very cool.
Like I can then transmute that energy. Okay. And then boom, I'm back. And
and I know because I'm very curious, because there's everybody. My wife always says there's many ways up the mountain, right? So, like, how do you transmute? Like, if you figure out, you're told that's Todd's, it's not yours. What do you do at that point? Do you transmute it out of your own field, or how does that work? Okay.
Yeah. Normally, I kind of run. Like I sort of tapped into this technique where, like, running energy, I sort of sit into a vortex and I transmute it back to source to be refined.
So it's almost like when an energy is presented, I'm just going to, like, kind of translating what you're saying, I guess. We're trying to understand it. It's almost like if you don't know what it is, it's almost like a blockage of energy, like a blockage of flow. And so I guess that'd be another way to say it, is you put the energy back. Once you understand what it is, then you put it back into motion.
Yeah. That's a
allow it to
beautiful way.
flow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. I love this job. I get to learn a lot of things. Yeah. So, and a lot of people are talking about, and, have discussed, you know, both what is my mission, and I know what my mission is. So some people are, I wish I knew what my mission is, and others, feel like they know what it is. What about you? Do you know what your mission is? Is it multiple missions, or do you see it as more of a singularity?
I always see it as a multifaceted, for myself and for most people, I would say, or most people that I encounter. Mission is something that is really enforced pretty much in all my work, because I kind of look from the bigger perspective, and it's I had this vision back in 2008, I think it was, and I was that's a whole other story, but I was on a very focused divine partnership mission back then. Let's just say
Yeah,
that.
you and 99% of the world.
And I had this vision or this kind of download that sort of came in, and I see it in two parts because I was seeing, like the figures that you have on the toilet, the masculine, feminine, like stick figures. And I saw them rows and rows and rows lined up. And they were just outlines. And then I saw one leave one and connect with another. And it started to scramble. And it was like everyone shifted partners. And this thought, it was like there's so many people in unhappy relationships and people who want to be with someone else, and like if one shifts, does that kind of create a domino effect that everyone can then align in the right or highest vibrational alignment partnership? And I kind of used to work in recruitment back in one of my old lifetime experiences, and I used to think the same thing. There's so many people unhappy in their jobs that are taking space that someone else would love to do what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And from the bigger perspective, I see so many talented people that just don't have a platform or don't have the confidence. And I look at what they are capable of, and I just go, the world needs this. The world needs this so much. And I think that this year, I mean, I bang on about this all the time, but I think this year is really, especially with everything that's going on in the world, this is a year for people to really, truly understand what it is that they're passionate about, what it is that their soul has asked them to come forward and do in this lifetime, because that's the most important thing that we can do in humanity, in service. And I've seen that has been a big theme of people, wherever they're at, trying to work it out or get on mission or create something that is
I agree.
more in alignment. So
Yeah, I
that's what
agree.
I get excited about that.
No, I agree. I say, I'll say it on the show. It's like, be with who you want, be with who you love, do what you love. And it's like, I don't know. It's like all the preparation, modalities, processes, all these intricate things that kind of got us here. Again, it's like the math changed June 1st. It's like, I'm not saying that those things go away, but what I'm saying is it kind of takes the complication out of it. If I don't have to think about 1,000 different points and, different assets, whatever, I can think about who do I love? Who do I want to be with? Soul tribe, relationship, whatever, and what do I love doing? And that makes it kind of simple. And then there's something about, I don't know, I guess it just illuminates the individual soul. And then that's the real virus or contagion, is that illumination is picked up by cosmic osmosis, or like tuning forks or whatever, people explain it different ways. Yeah. Very cool. And now you work online with people like this, like say face to face like this?
Yeah, via Zoom.
Yeah. That's most of what you do, or do you do work locally, mostly online?
Yeah, I run programs. I do in-person sessions, and I'm starting to move. I've been wanting to change for a little while, and I'm starting to dabble in art, energy art, and working with encoding activations through artwork.
Oh, cool.
And with that, putting, I do a lot of guided, like people would say guided meditations. They're not, they're processes, they're techniques so that people can work their own energy. And so trying to complement, and I love trying to come up with new ways of doing things that are going to be easy and effective, because I remember back when I was, still working full time, and I was trying to meditate 2 hours a day and do it, you've got to be able to, it's got to be easily applied. Otherwise it's not going to be effective or last long. So
Yeah.
I try and cater to,
Yeah. I
easy,
agree with
efficient
that.
and enjoyable.
I agree with that because, for one thing, our brain's changing or something's happening. Like the past is over, like now. It just, and then the future, attachment or fixation with the future seems to have gone away. It seems to be that's what the I guess the universal energies promoting or taking us to by force or by flow. Yeah, I can relate to what you're saying. So you talk to people all around the world. I'm going to ask you another loaded question. So you have to be brave and answer like you did for our friend. Uh, so I've noticed, and I made the comments to you about, because you're from Melbourne. I made the comment to you. I mean, if I look at, and I can't remember right off the top of my head, but I think Melbourne is like seventh or eighth in Soulology. So you're talking about New York City and London, Chicago, Houston. Uh, I can't remember some of the LA. I know Sydney's right there, but Melbourne, for the size of Melbourne to be, that says something. And plus people I've just come across. So in talking to different people around the world, and then you being from Australia, and particularly that region, is there something in the water in Australia? There seems to be, is it maybe because there's more, like my wife always says, there's 350 million people in the US. It's the same land mass as Australia, and there's only 20 million there. Do you think that has something to do with it? Do you notice a difference in the vibration in Australia with Australian people versus other parts of the world?
That's a really good question. It's not something that I've really thought too much about. I mean, I was born and raised here. I've traveled a lot. Um, I guess it does, yeah, and I always get pulled back here. I've tried to move overseas and I've tried to move to different parts, and I always get snapped back here. So obviously this is my grid point for now, and I think it does have a certain buzz about it. Has an open-mindedness about
Mhm.
it, and there are different hubs. I mean, especially where I live in the mountains outside of the city, and it is a very conscious community, I would say, where I live. You know, and that's where I was grown up, where I was raised. So I think it was a perfect platform for my upbringing and what I chose in this lifetime. But I don't know if I can. It definitely has a much more open, conscious mind than I would say other parts of Australia. In my opinion, that's my humble opinion.
I was just curious because I've noticed it. You know, like we were in Hawaii up until August of last year, well, about a year ago, and so for 10 months I was, doing the shows from that time zone, and
Yeah.
we had a lot of Australian or New Zealand participation. So then when I came over here, and we're all over the country, um, there'd been less because when we get off the last show, it's just morning over there. So I'm talking about on the lives. But last night, I was testing the broadcast software, and Morgan said, "Hey, you ought to just go on and do an open mic." And I did, and a bunch of Aussies came on. And it was really interesting because it reminded me of the energy that, I had seen before on the lives. It was very cool. There was people from other parts of the country too, but a lot of them were Australian or from New Zealand. So, yeah, there's got to be something
There
something in
must
the
be something
water.
in the world. I have heard people say specific things about, this is much more a spiritually aware country and things like that. But I don't know. From my perspective, I think you or at least, yeah, from my own reality, it doesn't matter where I've traveled in the world, I kind of find those people because they gravitate, like attracts like. So,
Well, I don't know. Maybe if you look at the continents of the earth like a family, Australia, New Zealand are kind of like the ones that were smart and distanced themselves from everybody. That seems to
yeah,
work for a lot of people, you know.
yeah.
Seems to.
It has its pros and cons. I mean, we are pretty far away from. But,
Do you
have you ever been here? Have you?
No, no. I'm planning on going there as soon as I can. I have a couple of things I got to take care of first, and I don't think I'll ever leave when I get there. When I met Morgan, it's funny because when I met her, I was only having experiences by myself, obviously, like most people. So I was what I told you earlier, but I knew that area, like I just knew it from a higher sensitivity. Like I could describe it, I could smell it, I could feel it. So I don't know, it means something to me. So I'm looking forward to the day I can land on the shores of Adelaide, find me a place, and
Yeah,
be based out of there.
beautiful.
But right now, we're all doing the work, and uh, this whole set of circumstances that we all divinely orchestrated this year
Hmm.
to help,
Hmm.
accentuate our expansion, uh, has kind of positioned people. Like one of the ladies that was on last night, I know her very well. She's from India, and she got quarantined. I forget what another part of India, I guess. But I mean, people are I don't want to say getting stuck, but they're being immobilized, and for reason. There's purpose in it,
Oh,
whether you're to be doing grid work in a certain area or to be exposed to certain people. That's one of the things about the quarantine I find kind of amusing, but also highly effective is these people that were having to stay home with family members who they haven't talked to for 20
mm.
years and actually having to have conversations and deal with things. So it's really kind of been a blessing. How do you see the mask and the quarantines and this and that from an energetic standpoint? How do you see all that?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, I find as inconvenient as it has been for many reasons, I see what the globe is going through in correlation to my own rapid ascension process, like being shut away for unknown periods of time, having to sort of go into isolation and, go through inner shifts, um, the level of uncertainty and becoming okay with that,
Mm-hmm.
um, being stuck in one point and not being able to go anywhere. I know in my during my own experience going through that, I was incredibly frustrated that I couldn't just move anywhere. Like, and that was where I you go through those moments where you get really mad and you start to rant, and it came back and it was like, the message was, this was your soul agreement to Gaia
Yeah.
to be right here, right now for this process. And I think, a lot of us, we're all doing this work, So I'm always optimistic, and I would like to see that as this event that is taking place, as it starts to shift, people come out of their homes. This is metaphoric, but come out of their homes into a different reality,
Mm-hmm.
from the work that's been done as they've gone inward.
True. Yeah.
That
Um,
that's how yeah.
yeah, I agree. Yeah. The first show today, a really connected high vibe guy, Benoit. He's been on before. Benoit Bouillon. Ooh, I'm getting good with my French. I didn't catch your name though. I got your name wrong. I didn't see the accent on the end of it. But
It's all right. I'm so used to
yeah,
it.
I Texasized it. But he was saying but he was really talking in relation to how a lot of people in these circles miss home, as in Star Family home.
Yeah.
And he said, but it also to me kind of rung true for what a lot of people are experiencing. I know my wife's experienced it. And that is he said something really interesting, and I'm going to sit with it because I'm not saying it's gospel, but there seemed to be there's some kind of something in there, some tidbit of wisdom or something. Anyway, he said he had he had gotten into that state just recently, and he asked, what's going on here? I'm missing home. And he said he was told that you have the feeling of missing home when you're really, of course, not separate from anything. You're not losing it. It's still there. And at least once we get past this particular trip. But he said that what causes it is a separation of degree between the heart and the soul. Like it drifts a little bit. And so you start to, maybe, I don't know, I'll try to translate what I felt he was saying or getting. And that was that you kind of get lost in the illusion of separation to a degree, whether it be, your planet that you came from, if that's how it works, or, your country, like my wife, or, or maybe even particular people, like, it might be for me, it might be my kids, but I don't know. That's something I'm going to sit with. I thought it was interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that. Um, in my own interpretation, like I know where I have completely gone through phases of being homesick for various different reasons. But when you're in that, what I like to call the higher self embodiment, and you're in that full alignment state, you can access everything. It's all there, it's just a frequency shift that we go through that we can. And so, yeah, I guess it's a process of reconnection in our highest form.
Yeah.
And
And what about, of course, getting back to embodiment, and if we just simplify it, the higher self, which of course is a compilation of, I would say, in fairness, a compilation of multidimensional aspects. We'll just call it the higher self, merging with the multifaceted human layers, because we know that's not just a single thing. And do you feel like that's happening for you? And do you feel like that's happening for everybody? I mean, in proportion to, their own path.
yeah,
Can you feel it being involved, or I don't know, how do you say, being in the driver's seat maybe more?
yeah. I have moments, and I have moments where it's not, but I'm aware of it. So,
spoken like a true healer. That's it. Sometimes I've asked some people, like, what do you do when you get triggered? Like, I don't get triggered. I'm like, but to me, this is what works. It's yeah. And what, I don't want to, my wife is cooking something that smells absolutely incredible. So I'm not going to be able to stand it much longer. But when it comes to, and particularly in the last 2-3 years, because like you were talking about, and a lot of practitioners this year have told me the same thing you did. Like, their clientele's changing. There's new people walking in the door. Everything's shifting. They're modifying modalities, dumping modalities, getting new modalities and such. When it comes to the work that you do, who does the work? Who is the one that does the transformation? Is it both parties involved? Is it the client? Can a practitioner do it for someone? You know what I mean? I mean, how does this work? Because I think in the past, you could make a pretty good argument that there were people healing other people, somehow,
yeah,
but
yeah,
has something changed in that part of the arena?
yeah. I would see it's changed significantly in the last 5 to 10 years. I see myself as a facilitator, nothing more, nothing less. When I work, it's a transference of energy. I work higher self to higher self predominantly. But it's really comes down to where that person's at and how far they're willing to jump in that moment of time.
Yeah. You can only take them so far. Yeah. Yeah. I remember because I didn't know anything about that energy work. I really didn't know anything. I was doing some, like, if I was intuitively guided, I would know I need to go help this person, and I had just my own ways of doing it. I didn't, but that's not my deal. But when I met my wife, and I went to her Facebook page, I hadn't met her, but I went to her Facebook page, and I read her bio, and she was talking about playing in dimension. She was talking about showing people how to, you know, showing them, taking them to the door, basically showing them how to do it for themselves. And I'd never read anything like that. And I'd read quite a few books in regard to self-improvement and healing and metaphysical and that type of thing. But I do think that that's kind of a new thing. And I don't say a new thing, but I think it's much more prevalent and sticking, sticking and working a lot more than the old, kind of yogi guru thing, that type of thing. It seems to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're a lot of fun to talk to. I'd love to collaborate with you again later on if you're
yeah,
open
that'd
to
be
that.
great.
I'm very happy. Thank you, Leliani. I hope I can never say this name. It's Leliani. Help me out. Thank you for
Yeah.
finding this beloved sister, beautiful beloved sister. So I noticed that somebody put your name on the Facebook page. I'm watching YouTube and Facebook comments, and your name was tagged. So
Oh,
I looked for you. Are you on Facebook?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And do you have is a personal page, just a personal page, or do you have another page as well?
I run under Cosmic Gateway
Okay.
primarily, so
Okay.
that's where I do like updates and
Okay.
videos and things like that,
Yeah.
collaborations. And I have a new page, a project that I started just over a year ago. It's Newer Children,
Mm.
which is I'm starting to build. That's something that's a bit slower, but yeah.
Is that working with children?
Um, it is to a degree. It's more what has been my path of exploring different types of conception through sacred union.
Oh my
Into,
God. We're gonna have to reschedule another show. We're gonna have to talk about this. We have to talk about this.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as I get off, I tell Morgan about this, she'll be saying the same thing. That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Or
That's a
yeah.
whole, she introduced me to also, I'd never heard of the Age of Trinity. She was shown, that years ago, when she was downloading it, we were moving from the age of duality to Trinity, which brings in that third energy.
Yeah.
And of course, her and I, and I've talked about it a lot, and she's done some shows with me, that third energy. Solargy itself is a third energy. Part of the third energy conglomerate that we've produced together actually came in and spoke to us, and you know and so there's a lot to be said for that, which is
Yeah.
far beyond the stereotypical or past paradigm intimacy. Where two or more come together, there's an energy that's produced that becomes its own consciousness and begins to work in collaboration with the incarnated souls, something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're up for this. Okay. We're going to have
Yes.
to, we'll send you a message, and, and we're going to see if you want to collaborate again, and we'll jump into that subject and
I
have a
would
few more
love that.
laughs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I can watch the Arcturians, abstract birds fly around your head. So, it's a pleasure to meet you. And,
Likewise, Todd.
there's
Thank
probably
you.
going to be, if you're on Facebook, there's probably going to be people that are going to be looking where to find you. I know somebody did tag you on a comment, but I don't know if you might want to put your links on the comments, probably on my Facebook page, because it's on 3, but that's where most of the traffic is. And then we're also on
Yeah.
YouTube at Solargy One Studios channel, which gets a lot of replay action. But I think people would be interested in finding out more about you. So I would encourage you to do that. And
Yeah. Awesome.
also, if you have anything that you are trying to expand awareness about, I would encourage you to post in the Solargy group. There's a very active, I'd say probably 22,000 people active of the 30,000 that are in that particular group. And it's a good place to spread awareness about what you're doing. People need to be exposed to you and people like you. So, yeah. I've enjoyed
Thank
it.
you, Tom.
Thank
I've
you.
immensely enjoyed connecting. It's been beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah,
I look forward to the next conversation.
sounds great. You take care. Peace out. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.